Today we're going to take on our rockers and valve adjustment. There's a lot of different ways we can do this. In this video we're going to go over the long version. So in this position here, take a look at our camshaft to the left there. We are in number 1 firing at TDC. So what that means is both the intake rocker and the exhaust rocker on number 1 cylinder are completely closed. So it's that point right there which will take our valve clearance measurement. And then we're going to follow the valve events as we rotate 120 degrees per section, and we're going to do that by following the 120 degree marks on our crank pulley, and we'll be able to see exactly what's going on as we rotate through the entire 720 degrees. And also by having the distributor in here, we'll be able to follow along and see exactly what's going on in the firing positions as we reach each 120 degrees. It's also refreshing to note, so we just got through our timing chain tensioners, and I was just curious after we put everything in there and set it all up and then pulled our gauges off for our cam timing. So after rotating with the chain tensioners just to see if there would be anything changing or any kind of variance taking place, I reset up my timing chain gauges, re-rolled through our 720 degree rotations as we're set up here, and we came out spot on 4.3 millimeters. So I'm very confident we're where we need to be with our valve timing. So let's go ahead and take a close-up look at our rockers and see exactly what we did to restore them and what we need to do to get them into place. Okay, so then getting started here, let's have a look at our rockers and see what we did to restore them. So these are the original rockers out of the car. We had the surface redone at Ollie's. They installed new bushings for us and machined them out to correct spec. We have new set screw and elephant's foot installed with new set nut, and that pretty much takes care of our rockers. And then we're going with a new set of rocker shafts from Porsche, and a couple of reasons we're doing that. I did send in the ones we took out of the car into Ollie's, and they checked them out, but they had some issues. I'm trying to focus in on those issues there. You can see there's some pitting right along here. Here, a little bit of grooving, you can see. And then the other thing, without realizing what we have here, they're actually the wrong size, so I don't know what they're supposed to be for, but they're not for this car. Anyways, we got a new set here from Porsche. We'll be going with those, and we'll just discard the old ones. Also, we're using new screws, and all our expansion nuts are original. I've just cleaned them up and refinished. And then we'll also be installing these rubber RSR seals on a rocker. So let's start with that first. Drop oil on there. Just kind of nurse it along there. Okay, well that's pretty simple to do. Let me just blast through these and then we'll move on. Okay, and then once we have our seals put into place, we can put our hardware in. So I've got the one with a round pocket is going to situate the head of our 5mm screw. That'll just drop down in there like that. And then the 8mm Allen will thread over the screw. And you'll want to make sure that your 8mm is not hitting the screw. So if you're using new screws and they're a little bit long, you may have to shave them down. You want to be just inside that pocket there so you can seat this and get full torque. If it's too long, you're going to be riding on the edge and you're going to wobble these guys out and you won't be able to get full torque. And to install, these are just finger tight. Okay, let's look at a couple things here before we get started, and this will help make sense of everything as we're rotating and going through the firing order. So firing order on this engine is 162-435. Right now we're at top dead center on our Z1 mark on the center of case, and this will be exactly where it needs to be as I just pulled the gauges off, rechecking our cam timing. So we're right on at this point. So what we're going to do, we're only going to rotate clockwise We're not going to go counterclockwise at any time here. Rotating clockwise, the next time we stop in rotation is going to be 120 degrees, and then another rotation to the next 120 degrees, and then another rotation 120 degrees, which will be a total rotation of 360 degrees. That'll take care of 3 cylinders. So we'll have to do that rotation a total of 2 times to get through all 6 cylinders. So then, looking at our distributor, this really is a good time to set this guy and try and work out anything that needs to get worked out. So I've marked on the cap here the firing order as it sets up. So it's going to go from 1, 6, 2, 4, 3, 5, and this is the direction. So right now it is set in the correct position according to our Z1 mark and the timing of firing on our number 1 cylinder. So there's a mark on the distributor right here. Let's pull this guy off here for a second. So our points are just opening, and I'm using this feeler gauge, which is the smallest feeler gauge I have. So right there, we're just starting to open. So that is really where we want our distributor set to start this car. And with everything lined up correctly, our camshaft orientation will be upright with our dot. Okay, so then what does all this mean? What it means is that in firing, our piston is all the way to the top. Both the intake and exhaust valve are closed, and we are riding the back side of the cam, which has no lift. You can see a little bit of movement going on there. So when we adjust our valves, this is the position we want to be in all the way through our firing order. Okay, and then just backing out here to just do a broader perspective on what we just talked about. So Z1 mark is at top dead center. We're at number 1 firing on our distributor at top dead center with points just starting to open. Your intake and exhaust rocker are on the back side of your cam lobes. So you have no resistance here. They should be slack. That's what we're going to set all the way through. So then getting started here, our number 1 intake has already been verified. It's been checked, reset, and we're good to go there. So now we're going to do the number 1 exhaust. So you can do intake and exhaust on the same cylinder as we rotate. So you can see here, this is where our rocker arm is going to ride along this edge. You can see we're on the back side of the cam. Nothing is touching there. If it's shiny, it's touching. And then the other thing we need to consider is direction of screw and then orientation in our hub or boss, or whatever you want to call these guys. We have a thick one and a thin one. And what we want to do is we want to line up the outside of our rocker shaft, not the expansion nut, but just the edge of the rocker shaft needs to be flush with the small hub or boss. And what that will do, I'm just going to eyeball it here, that will put your seal and your seal inside the area where it will actually do some sealing. If it's pushed too far this way or too far this way, they won't seal, and you can get a leak through here, and then this will leak. This is actually the outside of the car, so this is not an area that is taken up inside the engine. On the other side here, this is exposed to the element, so if we get a leak through here, you can have oil running around in there. This is the only cavity that should stay sealed, and all the oil needs to stay within this area. So setting this precisely where it needs to go is extremely important. Okay, let's go ahead and get one done here. I've already pre-oiled these, but we want to just make sure everything is nice and lubricated. I'm not using any assembly lube to do this lash because I really think it would interfere with a precise measurement. Okay, so the 5mm screw is going to go in here. Okay, so I'm using a magnet to just kind of help me out get these things started. They're just a little bit tricky to get going. And they can be a little bit stubborn to get going. Everything's just so tight. This is a oil filter wrench. Got the ends taped up so it don't hurt anything. This is just about the right reach. There we go. just want to be flush with this side. And then using a long extension and a plastic hammer, I'm just going to gently get that where we need it. A little bit too far there. And this guy right here should be flush. Right there. Okay, so we're loose, and our 5mm Allen is on this side. Yeah, and tightening up our number 1 is really tight in here, so I've had to make a custom Allen wrench to do that, shaving the end down just so we can get in there. Get a little bit of oil on the tip of our valve, and also on our cam lobe. Okay, so we're backed all the way out. Just the right amount of drag on there. Right about there. So then going back in to double check, so when you pull this out, this has a tendency to want to relax and drop onto your valve, so you want to pull back up and try and get this guy back in there. I think we need to go just a little bit tighter there. Right there. And then double checking, pull that guy up. Yep, that's it. Okay, so number 1 cylinder intake and exhaust is done. So now we're going to rotate clockwise 120 degrees to our first 120 degree mark, which is going to line up to the center of our case. So note the orientation of our rotor on number 1 as it moves to number 6, and the orientation of our cams will change. Okay, that's our first 120 degree rotation, and you can see now our distributor is on number 6 firing, which is the right rear. Okay, so our number 6 intake is set. Our lash feels good. Got some slight drag on there. And then also we are flush with the small boss, and our Allen set screw is tight. We got the 5mm in this cavity here, which is exposed to the elements. So I'm going to go ahead and blast through the exhaust side of it, and then we'll have a look. Okay, number 6 exhaust. I think we're pretty good there. And then looking on the inside there is our 5mm Allen on the exposed to the elements portion of the cam box, and then also outside here we're exposed to the elements, but this is going to be our flush with the cam box boss position. Okay, so that should pretty much give you some idea what's involved in setting up our rockers and what to look out for, setting our valve lash, and just being mindful that we're on the back side of the cam lobes. So now we're going to speed things up quite a bit. I'm just going to go through with you the rotations 120 degrees. I'm going to blast through the rockers with the lash adjustments. Once we have everything set up and in position, we'll go back and take a close-up look and see exactly how everything should orientate and how it should look. Okay, we're going to rotate to the next 120 degrees, and that will bring us to number 2 firing. number 2. Okay, from here I'm going to just blast through number 2 intake and exhaust rockers, and then we're going to rotate another 120 degrees. Okay, so we're about halfway there. Cylinders number 1, 6, and 2 are complete. So now we're going to rotate another 120 degrees, which will bring our Z1 mark up to the center of the case, and we'll be starting on firing number 4. Okay, number 4 is done. Now we're going to move on to number 3. Note we're at our Z1 mark, so we've gone 360 degrees. I'm going to take it up to the next 120 degree mark. And then also noting this is our position for our rotor, firing number 3. Okay, number 3 is done, so now we're on our last one, number 5. And then noting the position of our rotor, firing number 5. I'll sit down like that. Okay, so then from here, I'm just going to take this one more time. I'm going to go through all the rockers, 2 more full rotations here. I want to double check all the lash. I want to double check to make sure all our set screws are nice and tight. Once everything looks to be good and we don't have to go through this anymore, we're going to line it back up on our Z1 mark, number 1 firing, and then we're in a position here where we can close things up. Alright, so that seemed to go pretty smooth. Just a couple of minor adjustments. Other than that, valve lash looks to be really good, and our set screws are nice and tight. So let's go ahead now and roll this guy up on its end. We're going to take a close-up look inside the rocker areas and see exactly what they should look like. Okay, so then looking at cylinders 1 through 3 first. So our intakes, there really at a glance doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason why these are positioned the way they are. But actually, if you go through them one at a time and slowly analyze what's happening, it'll make good sense. So there's your intakes for 1 through 3. Then our exhausts for 1 through 3. 5mm guy on the inside there. It looks completely out of order, but it's really where things need to be. Alright, let's roll it over and look at the other side. And then this side here is going to be bank 4 through 6. Our intake. And I would say that you could be maybe 1 to 2 millimeters maximum of forgiveness in there before you start running into some problems with potential leakage. And then 4 through 6 exhaust. $5mm and 5mm, and the outside. And then one other thing to note here is I'm setting all these rockers in a temperature range of about 68 degrees. I don't think I would recommend doing this in extreme cold or extreme hot conditions because it could affect your lash measuring. So we're really at a point now where we can lubricate and close this guy up. I think we'll stop here for today, but on our next video we'll come back and we're going to lubricate up all our chains, everything that will need special attention for first time engine startup. Really need to look at that carefully because we're still a few weeks away from putting this engine in, so it's not like we can just close it up, start it up a week later, and we're good to go. So some things to consider there. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.